Welcome to Storytales. Please like this video and subscribe to Storytales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. John Davidson's world collapsed on a Tuesday evening in March, between bites of microwaved leftovers and sips of cold coffee. The shared tablet on his desk chirped with an incoming message, Emily's iMessage account syncing automatically, a feature she'd forgotten about months ago. A feature that now spelled the end of everything he'd believed about their marriage. The message preview caught his eye. Going to miss you tonight. Can't wait until next week. His fork clattered against the ceramic plate. Emily was supposed to be at her monthly book club meeting. The same meeting she'd been religiously attending every third Tuesday for the past 4 months. John's military-trained mind cataloged the pattern instantly, matching it against other irregularities he'd noticed but dismissed. The new perfume, the sudden interest in fitness, the late-night texts she blamed on work emergencies, with precise movements that belied the trembling in his hands. John opened the message thread. The tablet's harsh glow illuminated his face in the darkness of his home office, casting sharp shadows across features that grew more rigid with each scroll of his thumb. "These stolen moments aren't enough anymore," came the reply from a contact listed simply as James. John's jaw clenched tight enough to ache. James. Robert James Anderson from accounting. The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. The office Christmas party where Emily had danced with him a bit too long. The casual mentions of group lunches. The way she'd suggested hiring his firm for their tax preparation, setting the tablet down with deliberate care. John leaned back in his leather office chair. The house around him was silent save for the soft hum of his desktop computer and the pounding of blood in his ears. Emily wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. Time enough to begin his investigation, to start building the case that would become her undoing. That he opened his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard as he accessed their shared accounts. Credit card statements revealed a pattern of charges at the airport Marriott, always on Wednesdays, always between 12:30 and 2 p.m. Lunch breaks spent in stolen sheets instead of sandwich shops. Each discovery was another nail in the coffin of his trust. The framed photo on his desk caught his attention. Their wedding day 3 years ago. Emily radiant in white, her smile genuine and warm. His arm around her waist, proud and protective. He remembered the way she'd looked into his eyes during their vows, promising forever with such conviction that he'd actually believed her. The memory of that day twisted in his gut, corrupted now by the knowledge of her betrayal. His fingers traced the edge of the frame, remembering how she'd insisted on this particular shot for his office. "So I'll always be with you at work," she'd said. The irony tasted like acid in his throat that a text notification lit up his phone. "Emily, right on cue. Book club running late tonight. Don't wait up." John stared at the message, noting the precise construction of the lie. No unnecessary details, no elaborate excuses. She'd gotten good at this, he realized. How many other lies had he swallowed without question? How long had she been perfecting the art of deceiving him? He typed out a response, each word carefully chosen to maintain the facade of ignorance. "No problem. Hope you're enjoying the book." The cursor blinked at him for a moment before he added, "Love you." Her reply came quickly. "Love you too." John set the phone down and turned to his computer. Browser tabs multiplied as he began his research. Divorce attorneys specializing in infidelity cases, state laws regarding asset division, techniques for gathering evidence of affairs. His military intelligence training served him well as he methodically documented times, dates, locations. The sound of the garage door opening 3 hours later sent him into swift action. Browser history cleared, documents minimized, tablet returned to its usual position. When Emily walked into his office, he was reviewing work emails as if nothing had changed. She leaned down to kiss his cheek, and he forced himself to remain still, to accept the gesture as he had hundreds of times before. The unfamiliar perfume lingered in his nostrils, something floral and expensive. Had Anderson bought it for her? Or had she purchased it herself? Another charge hidden among legitimate expenses? "You're working late," she observed, her tone casual. "Perfect. Practiced. Big project," he replied, matching her tone while cataloging every micro-expression that crossed her face. "How was book club?" "Good." She smiled, and he saw it now, the slight tension around her eyes, the way her fingers fidgeted with her necklace. We're reading that new thriller I told you about. The one about the perfect marriage that turns out to be built on lies. The irony might have broken him if he hadn't already decided on his course of action. Instead, he smiled back, playing his role in their charade. Sounds interesting. You'll have to tell me how it ends. I will. She squeezed his shoulder, a gesture that once brought comfort, now sending revulsion crawling across his skin. Don't stay up too late. John listened to her footsteps retreat down the hall, heard the shower start running. His eyes returned to the wedding photo, to the smiling faces frozen in time. With slow, deliberate movements, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk and laid the frame face down inside. The man in that photo, the trusting husband who believed in forever, was dead. In his place sat someone colder, someone capable of the kind of calculated revenge that would make Emily wish she'd never learned to lie. Opening a new document, John began to type. Every detail would matter in the weeks to come. Every message, every charge, every carefully constructed lie. He would build his case methodically, gather his evidence patiently, and when the time came to confront her, there would be no room for denial, no space for excuses. The shower shut off upstairs. Soon, Emily would go through her nighttime routine, climb into their bed, and fall asleep beside him as if she hadn't spent her afternoon destroying everything they'd built together. John's fingers moved across the keyboard with renewed purpose. Let her sleep peacefully for now. Let her believe her secrets were safe. He could wait. After all, the best ruins were built by design, not impulse, and he was just getting started. Over the next 2 weeks, John transformed their home into his personal surveillance center. Every detail of Emily's routine became a data point in his growing collection of evidence. He installed a keystroke logger on their shared computer, set up automatic forwarding of her text messages, and methodically documented every inconsistency in her stories. Wednesday lunch breaks became his personal hell. Sitting in his office, he watched the tracking app show Emily's location at the airport Marriott, staying exactly 90 minutes each time. The precision of her scheduling felt like another insult. She'd turned adultery into a carefully planned appointment. During dinner one evening, Emily's phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. John noticed how her eyes darted to it, the slight tension in her shoulders as she resisted the urge to check it immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral as he cut into his steak. "Just work stuff?" Emily smiled, but her fingers drummed against the table. "The Anderson account is giving us trouble." The Anderson account. John's knife scraped against the plate. "Robert Anderson's team?" She took a sip of wine. "They're restructuring their portfolio, so we're all putting in extra hours." Extra hours? John speared a piece of meat. "That explains the late nights." Emily's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "Just that you've been working hard lately." He met her eyes, his gaze steady. "I hope they appreciate your dedication." A flicker of unease crossed her face, there and gone in an instant. "They do. Robert's been very supportive." "I'm sure he has." John smiled, imagining how that support would crumble when Robert's wife received the evidence package he was building. More wine? Later that night, John sat in his office reviewing the day's recordings. Emily's voice played through his headphones, a phone conversation she'd had in the garage thinking she was alone. "I can't tonight." "No, he's home." "I know, I miss you too." "Next week, I promise." "The Phoenix conference gives us 3 whole days." John's fingers tightened on his mouse as he added the audio file to his growing collection. The conference was supposed to be her mistake, the moment when her web of lies would finally collapse. But waiting was becoming increasingly difficult. Every morning, he watched her apply that new perfume, knowing it wasn't for him. Every night, he lay beside her in bed, listening to her breathing and imagining her with Anderson, plotting their next rendezvous. The rage built slowly, a cold pressure behind his ribs that threatened to explode. Friday morning, Emily was running late for work. John watched from the kitchen as she rushed around gathering her things, her movements frantic. "Have you seen my blue folder?" she called out. "The one with the conference materials?" John glanced at the folder sitting in his office, filled with hotel confirmations and messages he'd printed. "No, sorry. Check your car, maybe?" Shit. She ran a hand through her hair. "I need those documents." "I'm sure you'll figure something out." He sipped his coffee. You're good at improvising? She didn't catch his meaning, too preoccupied with her search. When she finally left, 30 minutes late and clearly stressed, John allowed himself a small smile. The folder would make an excellent addition to his evidence pile that weekend. They attended a neighborhood barbecue. John watched as Emily worked the crowd, laughing and chatting, playing the role of perfect wife. She'd worn a sundress he used to love before he knew it was part of her costume. You two are always so well-matched, Susan from next door commented, gesturing between them. Real relationship goals? Emily beamed, sliding her arm through John's. We just understand each other so well, don't we, honey? John pulled her closer, feeling her warmth against his side. Completely, he agreed, his tone pleasant while his mind calculated how many of their neighbors would soon know the truth. No secrets between us. He caught the slight stiffening of her shoulders, the way her smile faltered for just a moment. These little tells had become his obsession, the tiny cracks in her performance that proved she wasn't as clever as she thought that night. After Emily had gone to bed, John sat at his computer updating his files. The evidence was overwhelming. Hundreds of text messages, hotel receipts, phone records, location data. But it wasn't enough. He needed her to feel as blindsided by the truth as he had been opening his email. He began drafting messages to her family members, her parents, her sister, her closest friends. Each one would receive a carefully curated selection of evidence the day he confronted her. The thought of her social world imploding brought him a satisfaction that should have disturbed him, but didn't. His phone buzzed another intercepted message from Anderson. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. You're amazing. John's jaw clenched as he added the message to his database. Emily's reply came quickly. Same here. Getting harder to wait between meetings, getting harder. The words mocked him. He opened his desk drawer, pulling out the revolver he'd been cleaning each night. The weight of it in his hand felt right, grounding. Soon, he would show her exactly how hard things could get that a noise from upstairs made him pause. Emily's footsteps heading to the bathroom. John quickly restored his screen to a Word document and waited, listening. 3 years of marriage had taught him her patterns. She would use the bathroom, get a glass of water, and check her phone before going back to bed. Right on cue, she appeared in his office doorway, wrapped in her silk robe. Still working? Always something to do. He didn't look up from his screen. Go back to bed. Big week ahead with your conference. Don't remind me. She yawned. 3 days of presentations and workshops. I'm already exhausted thinking about it. John's fingers paused over the keyboard. I'm sure you'll find ways to relax. Maybe. She crossed the room and kissed the top of his head. Don't stay up too late. He waited until her footsteps faded before opening his bottom drawer. Inside, next to the face-down wedding photo, lay a single bullet. He picked it up, rolling it between his fingers. 3 days of her conference left to endure. 3 days to finalize his plans. 3 days until he showed his wife exactly who she'd been sleeping beside all these years. John placed the bullet next to his keyboard and returned to his work. The night stretched ahead of him, full of quiet preparation and cold determination. Let Emily sleep peacefully upstairs, dreaming of her lover and their stolen moments. Soon enough, she would learn that nightmares could come true in broad daylight. Friday morning arrived with the mechanical precision of an execution. John watched Emily pack from the doorway of their bedroom, noting how she hummed to herself while folding clothes into her leather weekender bag. 3 outfits for 3 days. All new, he noticed. All bought with their joint account. Did you pack your presentation materials? He asked, maintaining the charade. His voice stayed steady despite the rage churning in his gut. All set. Emily held up a manila folder, not the blue one he'd hidden. I've been preparing for weeks. John's fingers dug into the doorframe. I'm sure you have. She crossed to him, rising on tiptoes to kiss his cheek. That new perfume again, the scent now synonymous with betrayal. Don't work too hard while I'm gone, okay? Wouldn't dream of it. He managed a smile that felt like broken glass. Have a safe flight to Phoenix. The moment her car disappeared down the street, John's facade crumbled. He slammed his fist into the bedroom wall, welcoming the sharp burst of pain across his knuckles. The drywall cracked, leaving a crater at eye level. The first visible mark of the destruction to come, his phone chirped. The tracking app showed Emily's car heading east toward the airport Marriott, not west toward Phoenix. Right on schedule, day one became a blur of calculated rage. John moved through the house like a ghost, gathering evidence and building his case. In his office, he spread everything across his desk: credit card statements, phone records, hotel receipts, screenshots of messages. Each piece was carefully labeled and annotated, building a timeline of betrayal. At 2:47 p.m., Emily's location that stopped moving. The Marriott. John opened his laptop and began drafting emails. To Margaret Thompson, subject: Your daughter's activities, dear mom and dad. I thought you should know what your perfect daughter has been doing. To Rebecca Chin, subject: Your sister's secret life. Becky is Emily's sister. You deserve to know the truth. To Claire Anderson, subject: Your husband's infidelity, Mrs. Anderson. I regret to inform you. Each email contained selected evidence enough to destroy any doubt, but not enough to seem vindictive. He saved them all to his drafts folder. Timing set for Monday morning, the first night alone, John cleaned his revolver. The mechanical process soothed him. Each part disassembled, cleaned, and reassembled with military precision. The single bullet sat on his desk, a silent promise. His phone buzzed with an intercepted message from Anderson. Miss you already. These 3 days will be perfect. John's response was to pour himself 3 fingers of whiskey and call his lawyer's after-hours number. Davidson. Howard's voice was gruff with sleep. Do you know what time it is? I need everything ready by Monday morning. John's voice was ice. Every document, every filing, every legal maneuver we discussed. John, these things take time. Money makes things move faster. John took a slow sip of whiskey. Whatever it costs. I want her served the moment I confront her. A pause, then. I'll make it happen. But John, are you sure about this? Some couples can work through. If you finish that sentence, I'm finding another lawyer. Howard sighed. I'll have everything ready. But the gun thing we talked about, that's risky. The gun's not loaded. It's theater. John rolled the bullet between his fingers. She needs to understand the gravity of her choices. Your military record. If this goes wrong, nothing goes wrong when you plan properly. John ended the call, turning back to his computer. Day 2 dawned with a headache and renewed purpose. John spent the morning on the phone, first with their accountant, then their bank. Joint accounts were frozen, assets secured, passwords changed. Each call was another nail in the coffin of Emily's comfortable life. The tracking app showed Emily and Anderson spending the day together shopping, lunch, a movie, playing house, while John orchestrated their mutual destruction. He documented every movement, every charge, every moment they thought was private. That afternoon, he filmed himself loading the revolver with a single bullet, then removing it, evidence that the gun was empty during what would come next. His military training had taught him the importance of covering all angles. The second night was worse than the first. John lay in their bed, surrounded by her lingering scent, imagining her with Anderson. The rage had crystallized into something colder, more focused. He pulled out his phone and began composing a text to Anderson's wife. Claire, I know this is unexpected, but we need to talk about our spouses. Call me. Here's proof of what they've been doing. He attached a carefully selected photo, Emily and Robert entering the hotel, time-stamped and clear. Claire's response came within minutes. Oh my God. Call me now. The next hour was spent laying out the evidence for Claire, listening to her shock turn to fury. By the end of the call, he had another ally in his war against the lover's perfect bubble. Robert has no idea, I know. Claire's voice was raw. None. And he won't until Monday. John's smile was all teeth. I want them both to feel secure right up until the moment everything falls apart. Good? The venom in her voice matched his own. Make them suffer. Day 3. The last day. John moved through it with mechanical precision, checking and double-checking every detail of his plan. The lawyers had everything ready. The emails were scheduled. Claire was prepared to confront Robert the moment John gave the signal, that he tracked Emily and Anderson's movements with obsessive focus. Another day, playing couple brunch, a walk in the park, back to the hotel. He imagined them laughing about their clever deception, never suspecting the sword hanging over their heads. Evening found him in his office, surrounded by the artifacts of his wife's betrayal. The revolver sat cleaned and ready, the bullet a silent companion on his desk. His phone showed Emily's finally moving, heading home. Back to the life she destroyed. John straightened his tie and opened his laptop. Everything was in place. Tomorrow morning, Emily would return to find her husband waiting. Not the passive man she'd played for a fool, but someone far more dangerous, someone capable of dismantling her entire world with cold, calculated precision. Duddy picked up the bullet, rolling it between his fingers one last time before loading it into the revolver. The cylinder clicked shut with finality. Let her come home thinking she'd gotten away with it all. Let her walk through that door, believing her lies were still intact. John settled into his office chair, the gun a comfortable weight in his hand. Tomorrow would be a day of reckoning, and he was ready to watch her world burn. Monday morning arrived with the steady drum of rain against the windows. John sat in his office, the revolver placed precisely in the center of his desk, surrounded by stacks of evidence. His phone showed Emily's moving steadily closer to home. No stops, no hesitation, no idea that she was driving straight into an ambush. 9:47 a.m. The garage door hummed to life. John remained motionless, listening to the familiar sequence. Car door, trunk, her heels on concrete. The door to the house opened and closed. John, her voice carried up the stairs, light and casual. Are you home? He didn't answer. The clicking of heels grew closer, each step marking another moment of her ignorance. She appeared in his office doorway, still flushed from travel, her hair perfectly styled. She looked happy, relaxed until she saw his expression. What's wrong? The smile faded from her face. Why aren't you at work? John picked up the revolver with deliberate slowness. The cylinder opened with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. How was Phoenix? His voice was quiet, controlled. Did you enjoy the conference? Color drained from Emily's face as she watched him slide a single bullet into the chamber. I don't. The cylinder snapped shut. Don't insult me with more lies. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit down. We need to talk about your messages. About the hotel charges. About all the times you've been fucking Robert Anderson instead of attending your fictional book club. Emily's legs seemed to give out, and she sank into the chair. John, please, I can explain. Can you? He laid his phone on the desk, screen up. The tracking app displayed her weekend movements in damning detail. Can you explain why you spent 3 days at the airport Marriott instead of at a conference in Phoenix? Can you explain why every Wednesday lunch break shows you the same hotel? Can you explain any of this without lying to my face again? You've been tracking me? Her voice rose with indignation. How dare you? The sound of John's laugh cut her off, a harsh, bitter sound that seemed to surprise them both. How dare I? That's really where you want to start this conversation? He spun the revolver cylinder. Because we can talk about daring. We can talk about betrayal. We can talk about how you dared to throw away our marriage for cheap hotel rooms and hidden text messages. It's not like that, Emily protested, but her voice wavered. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. John's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. I understand that you're a liar and a cheat. I understand that you thought I was too stupid or too weak to notice. I understand that you've been laughing at me with your lover, sharing jokes about your foolish, trusting husband. He lifted the revolver, watching her face contort with fear. But mostly, I understand that you have no idea who I really am or what I'm capable of. Emily raised her trembling hands. Please, John, put the gun down. We can talk about this like adults. Like adults? He pressed the barrel against his own temple. You want to act like adults now, after sneaking around like teenagers? Fine. Let's play a game. I ask a question, you tell the truth. If I think you're lying, he pulled the trigger. Click. Emily's scream pierced the morning quiet. John lowered the gun, a cold smile playing at his lips. Did you really think I'd load it first? Give me some credit, Emily. I was planning this while you were spreading your legs for another man. He spun the cylinder again. Now, let's start with an easy one. How long has it been going on? 3 months, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Since January. Wrong. John's voice could have frozen hell. Credit card records show the first hotel meeting was in December. Want to try again? Emily's shoulders slumped. For months. It started at the Christmas party. Better. He moved the gun to point at her. Next question. Do you love him? No. The answer came too quickly, too forcefully. It's not about love, John. It's just you've been so distant, so cold. I needed something. Don't. The word cracked like a whip. Don't you dare try to blame this on me. Every choice was yours. Every lie. Every betrayal. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers. You want to talk about cold? You haven't seen cold yet. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a thick manila envelope. While you were enjoying your weekend of passion, I was busy. Would you like to know what I've been doing? Emily stared at the envelope, fresh fear creeping across her features. What did you do? I protected myself. John began laying documents on the desk between them. First, I froze all her joint accounts. Then I filed for divorce. My lawyer was very interested in the evidence I've collected. You'll be served with the papers tomorrow. You can't. I'm not finished. His voice remained eerily calm. I also took the liberty of informing your parents about their daughter's extracurricular activities. Your sister, too. They should be calling any minute now. Emily's phone buzzed as if on cue. She glanced at it, her face crumpling as she saw her mother's name on the screen. Oh, and one more thing. John picked up the revolver again, rolling it between his palms. I had a fascinating conversation with Claire Anderson last night. Robert's wife? She was quite surprised to learn about her husband's activities. Apparently, they have a prenup that specifically addresses infidelity. You told his wife. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. How did you know it was him? Please. John's laugh was without humor. Did you think you were being clever, using his middle name in your phone? James. He shook his head. I'm not the fool you thought I was, Emily. I'm not the weak, passive husband you could walk all over. He stood, towering over her. In fact, you never really knew me at all. And now, he loaded a bullet into the revolver with slow, deliberate movements. Now you're going to learn exactly who you've been sleeping next to all these years. The gun pressed cold against her forehead. Emily's breath came in short, panicked gasps. Please, she begged. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. We can fix this. John lowered the gun, chuckling darkly. Fix this? Oh, Emily. He shook his head. You still don't understand. I don't want to fix anything. I want to destroy everything you care about. Your reputation, your social standing, your career. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. I'm going to dismantle your life piece by piece. And the best part? You're going to have to watch it all happen, knowing you brought it on yourself. He straightened up, tucking the revolver into his waistband. The gun was just theater, a way to keep you still long enough to hear what's coming. The real pain? He smiled, and there was nothing of warmth or mercy in it. That's only the beginning. John walked to the door, pausing in the threshold. I'd start packing if I were you. Your name's not on the deed, and my lawyer will be serving you with an order to vacate the premises within 48 hours. He glanced back at her, taking in her tear-stained face and trembling hands. Welcome to your new reality, Emily. I hope he was worth it. As he walked away, Emily's sobs echoed through the house. But John felt nothing, no pain, no regret, no trace of the love he'd once felt for her. There was only the cold satisfaction of a plan well executed, and the promise of more vengeance to come. The sound of Emily's sobs faded as John descended the stairs, but the tension in the house only grew thicker. He paused in the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of whiskey with steady hands. The familiar weight of the revolver pressed against his back, a constant reminder of what was to come. John! Emily's voice drifted down, still trembling, but with an edge of desperation. We need to talk about this. He took a slow sip of whiskey. Now you want to talk? Footsteps on the stairs, hesitant but determined. Emily appeared in the kitchen doorway, her mascara streaked across her cheeks, her perfect appearance finally cracking. What you're doing, it's cruel, she said, gripping the doorframe for support. John's laugh was sharp enough to cut. Cruel? You want to discuss cruelty? He set his glass down with deliberate care. Let's talk about cruelty, Emily. Let's talk about lying to my face for months. Let's talk about fucking another man in hotel rooms I paid for. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. He pulled the revolver from his waistband, setting it on the kitchen island between them. You wanted to talk? Let's talk. But we're going to play by my rules now. Emily's eyes fixed on the gun. What are you doing? Creating consequences. John spun the cylinder. You've had months of playing your games. Now we're going to play mine. He gestured to the bar stool across from him. Sit down. I'm not playing any games with that thing. Yes, you are. His voice hardened. Because right now, this game is the only thing standing between you and complete ruin. Sit down. She moved slowly, perching on the edge of the stool like a bird ready to flee. John watched her with cold amusement, noting how her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter. The rules are simple, he said, picking up the revolver. I ask questions. You answer truthfully. Every lie. He spun the cylinder again. Well, let's just say the stakes are high. This is insane, Emily whispered. Insane? John aimed the gun at his own temple. Insane is trusting your wife for 3 years while she makes you look like a fool. He pulled the trigger. Click. Emily flinched violently. Stop it. Why? Does it bother you to watch someone you claim to love risk their life? He lowered the gun, pointing it at her. First question. When did you stop loving me? I never. She swallowed hard as his finger tightened on the trigger. Christmas. Maybe before. I don't know exactly when. But you kept up the act. John's voice was ice. Kissing me goodbye each morning. Playing the perfect wife. All while planning your little rendezvous. What do you want me to say? Anger crept into her voice. That I'm sorry? That I made a mistake? I want the truth. For once in your miserable life, I want you to stop lying. He spun the cylinder again. Next question. How many times did you fuck him in our bed? Emily's face paled. Never. I wouldn't. Lying already? John shifted his aim to his own head. Should I test how lucky I'm feeling? No. She reached out instinctively. Please, I'm telling the truth. Never in our bed. Never in our house. I couldn't. Couldn't what? Couldn't quite bring yourself to completely desecrate our home? His laugh was bitter. How considerate of you. Where was your favorite spot then? The Marriott? His car? Some sleazy motel. Tears slid down Emily's cheeks. Why are you doing this? Because you need to understand what you've done. John leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers. You didn't just have an affair, Emily. You didn't just betray our vows. You systematically destroyed everything we built together, and you did it with a smile on your face. That's not fair. The gun slammed down on the counter, making her jump. Fair? You want to talk about fair? John's voice rose for the first time. Was it fair when you were texting him during our anniversary dinner? Was it fair when you were spending our savings on hotel rooms and new lingerie? Was it fair when you were laughing with him about how oblivious your husband was? I never laughed about you. More lies. John picked up the revolver again. I read every message, Emily. Every single one. Should I quote them to you? Should I remind you of what you said about our marriage? About me? Emily's face crumpled. Please don't. My husband doesn't suspect a thing, John quoted, his voice dripping with venom. He's too wrapped up in his work to notice anything. That was a good one. Or how about, sometimes I think he deserves this for being so distant. My personal favorite was, at least someone knows how to make me feel wanted. Stop, she whispered. Why? These are your words, Emily. Your choices. He spun the cylinder again. Now you get to face them. Next question. Did you ever think about how this would destroy me? Or was I just collateral damage in your pursuit of happiness? She stared at the gun, her voice barely audible. I didn't let myself think about it. No, you didn't think at all? John's smile was razor sharp. But I've been thinking. For weeks, I've been thinking about nothing else. About justice. About revenge. About making sure you feel every ounce of pain you've caused. What do you want from me? Emily's voice cracked. Whatever it is, just tell me. Please. John leaned back, studying her tear-stained face. I want you to understand something, Emily. Something very important. He raised the gun again. You thought you knew me. You thought I was predictable, passive, easy to fool. But you never really knew me at all. The revolver's barrel pressed cold against her forehead. Your lover. Does he know you're here? Does he know what's happening? Emily's breath came in short gasps. And no, we agreed not to contact each other until tomorrow. Smart man. John's smile widened. He's probably at home right now, dealing with his own version of this conversation. Claire can be quite passionate when she's angry. You told his wife. Horror dawned on Emily's face. John, you didn't. I told everyone. He pulled the trigger, clicked at Emily's scream echoed through the kitchen. John lowered the gun, watching as she slumped forward, her body shaking with sobs. Your parents know. Your sister knows. By now, most of your friends know. He took another sip of whiskey. The evidence is quite compelling. Hotel receipts, text messages, location data. I was very thorough in documenting your infidelity. You've ruined everything. She gasped between sobs that John's laugh was genuine this time. No, Emily. You ruined everything. I'm just making sure you face the consequences. He stood, tucking the revolver back into his waistband. But we're not done yet. Not even close. Emily looked up, mascara streaked across her face. What more do you want? Want? He shook his head. This isn't about what I want anymore. This is about what you deserve. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. The divorce papers will be delivered tomorrow morning. I suggest you start packing. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem. John finished his whiskey in one smooth motion. Maybe your lover has a spare room. Although, he checked his phone, smiling at a text message. According to Claire, he's sleeping in his car tonight. Apparently, their prenup was very specific about infidelity. Emily's phone began buzzing, a cascade of notifications flooding in. John watched as she picked it up with trembling hands, her face growing paler with each message. Looks like the emails I scheduled have started going out. He moved toward the door. I'd turn that off if I were you. It's going to be a busy day for your inbox. John, please. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. We can work through this. We can get counseling, try to save it. His voice could have frozen hell. The time for fixing things is long past. Now it's time for consequences. He paused in the doorway. Oh, and Emily? This was just the beginning. I haven't even started showing you what real cruelty looks like. Her sobs followed him up the stairs, a symphony of despair that brought him no satisfaction, only cold, calculated determination. The game had begun, but John was far from finished playing. John stood in his office, listening to Emily's frantic phone conversation drift up from below. Her voice cracked with desperation as she tried to explain the unexplainable to her mother. Mom, please just listen. A pause. No, it's not what you think. Another pause, longer this time. Mom? Mom! The sound of her phone hitting the counter echoed through the house, followed by a muffled sob. John smiled, checking his watch. Right on schedule, her family's disappointment was just the first domino to fall. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire Anderson. Robert's begging me not to take the house. Should have thought about that before he started screwing your wife, John typed back. No mercy. Make him suffer. Emily's footsteps on the stairs, unsteady but determined. She appeared in his doorway, her earlier fear replaced by something harder. You've had your fun, she said, voice raw from crying. You've humiliated me, threatened me, destroyed my reputation. Are you satisfied? John looked up slowly, studying her like an interesting specimen. Fun? You think this is about fun? Then what is it about? Revenge? Power? She stepped into the office. You want me to suffer? Mission accomplished. You win. Win. He stood, moving around the desk. This isn't a game you can concede, Emily. This isn't something you can sweet-talk your way out of. He pulled the revolver from his waistband. But since you brought up power, Emily backed away, hitting the doorframe. Not this again. Yes, this again. John advanced, closing the distance between them. Because you still don't understand. You still think this is something that will blow over. Something you can survive with your usual tricks. What else do you want from me? Her voice rose with frustration. I admitted everything. I confessed. I'm sorry. Sorry. John's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. Sorry is what you say when you step on someone's foot. Sorry is what you say when you forget to buy milk. He pressed the gun under her chin, forcing her head up. Sorry doesn't begin to cover what you've done. Then tell me what will. Emily's eyes met his, desperate but calculating. You want money? Take it all? You want the house? It's yours. Just stop this madness. John's smile was cold. You still think you have something to bargain with? How adorable. He lowered the gun, stepping back. Check your email. What? Check. Your email. Emily pulled out her phone with trembling hands, opening her inbox. John watched her face as she read, savoring each micro-expression of horror. You contacted my firm? She looked up, face ashen. You sent them evidence of you using company time and resources to conduct your affair? Of you falsifying expense reports to cover hotel meetings? Of you lying about business trips? John shrugged. The ethics board seemed very interested. They'll fire me. Almost certainly. He spun the revolver's cylinder. Funny how actions have consequences, isn't it? Emily's knees gave out, and she slid down the doorframe to the floor. You're destroying my entire life. No, I'm destroying the life you built on lies. John crouched in front of her. Every privilege you enjoyed, every comfort you took for granted, all of it came from the marriage you treated like garbage. Now you get to see how the other half lives. I'll fight you, she whispered. The divorce, the house, everything. I'll get a lawyer. With what money? John's smile widened. Your accounts are frozen. Your credit cards are canceled. Your reputation is in tatters. He stood, looking down at her. But by all means, try to fight. It'll just give me more opportunities to reveal what you really are. Emily's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, then quickly looked away. Robert? John asked, though he already knew. Let me guess. Claire's taking him for everything. The house, the cars, the vacation property in Aspen. He chuckled. Amazing what a well-documented affair can do to a prenup. You planned all of this, Emily said slowly. Every detail, every humiliation. You've been orchestrating this for weeks. Finally, she begins to understand. John moved back to his desk, settling into his chair. Did you really think those lunch breaks were private? Those hotel meetings were secret? I had people watching you, Emily. Taking pictures, recording conversations, building a case that would stand up in any court. People? What people? You'd be amazed what private investigators can document when properly motivated. He opened a drawer, pulling out a thick folder. Would you like to see? I have some particularly interesting photos from last Wednesday. That red lingerie was a bold choice for a business lunch. Emily's face flushed red. You bastard. Careful now. John's voice hardened. Name-calling won't help your situation. He lifted the revolver. In fact, I think it's time for another round of our game. Tell me, Emily, did you ever stop to think about what would happen if you got caught? She eyed the gun warily. No. Finally, an honest answer. He spun the cylinder. Next question. Did you enjoy it? Lying to my face every day, playing the devoted wife while making a mockery of our marriage. I don't know. The gun pointed at her head. Wrong answer. Yes, she blurted. Yes, okay? It was exciting. It made me feel alive. Is that what you want to hear? Click. Emily flinched, but the chamber was empty. John lowered the gun, his expression unchanged. See? Honesty isn't so hard. He leaned back in his chair. Now about your lover. Tell me about his promises. What pretty lies did Robert spin to get you into his bed? He said. Emily's voice caught. He said he'd leave Claire, that we'd be together properly once things settled down. John's laugh was genuine this time. And you believed him? The man who's been cheating on his wife of 15 years. He shook his head. You're more naive than I thought. At least he made me feel wanted. Emily surged to her feet, anger finally breaking through her fear. When was the last time you looked at me? Really looked at me? When was the last time you showed any interest in my life? My feelings? Here it comes. John's voice dripped with sarcasm. The justification. The blame shifting. Poor neglected Emily, driven into another man's arms by her cold, distant husband. He stood slowly. Let me explain something to you. If you were unhappy, you could have talked to me. If you felt neglected, you could have suggested counseling. If you wanted out, you could have filed for divorce. He moved around the desk again, each step deliberate. Instead, you chose to lie, to cheat, to betray every vow we made. Those were your choices, Emily, your decisions. And now, he pressed the gun to her chest, right over her heart. Now you get to live with the consequences. What are you going to do? She whispered. Kill me? John laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. Kill you? No, no, no. Death is too quick, too merciful. He lowered the gun. I want you to live, Emily. I want you to wake up every morning knowing what you've lost. I want you to watch your carefully constructed life crumble around you. I want you to feel the weight of every choice, every lie, every betrayal. He turned away, walking to the window. You know what the best part is? This is just the beginning. Every time you think you've hit bottom, I'll be there to show you it can get worse. Every time you try to rebuild, I'll be there to tear it down. Every time you think you're safe. He spun suddenly, firing the gun at the wall beside her head. Click, Emily screamed, dropping to the floor. John tucked the revolver away, his point made. That's what betrayal feels like, Emily. That constant fear, that never-ending uncertainty. He walked past her trembling form. Get used to it. It's your new normal. Her sobs followed him down the hallway, but they brought him no satisfaction. This wasn't about emotional release or cathartic revenge. This was about justice, cold and calculated, served one devastating revelation at a time, and he was just getting started. The house had grown quiet, a deceptive calm settling over rooms that still echoed with Emily's earlier screams. John stood in the kitchen, methodically cleaning the revolver. Each piece was dismantled and wiped with precision, his movements mechanical and practiced. That Emily's phone buzzed on the counter where she'd left it. Another message from Robert Anderson. John picked it up, reading the desperate text. Claire's taking everything. My lawyer says without your testimony about the affair being mutual, I'll lose everything. Please call me back. John deleted the message before Emily could see it. Let her wonder why her lover had abandoned her. Let her feel that betrayal on top of everything else. Footsteps on the stairs again, slower this time. Emily appeared in the doorway, her face washed clean of makeup, her designer outfit replaced with jeans and a sweater. She looked smaller somehow, stripped of her usual armor. I've been thinking, she said, her voice hoarse from crying. John continued cleaning the gun barrel. Have you now? You're right. About everything. She moved into the kitchen, keeping the island between them. I made choices. Terrible choices. I destroyed something precious, and I can't fix it. Finally, a moment of clarity. John began reassembling the revolver. What brought on this sudden insight? Robert just called Claire. Emily's hands gripped the counter edge. He told her it was all my idea, that I pursued him, manipulated him, trapped him into the affair. John's laugh was soft and cruel. Of course he did. Men like Robert always find a woman to blame. The cylinder clicked back into place. Let me guess. He's asking you to back up his story? How did you know? John loaded a single bullet. Because I planned it this way, Emily. Every detail. Every betrayal. Even this moment. Watching you realize that your lover is just as faithless with his promises to you as you were with your vows to me. You wanted this to happen, she whispered. You wanted him to turn on me? I merely provided the opportunity. Robert's cowardice did the rest. John raised the revolver, admiring how the kitchen lights played off its surface. Tell me, how does it feel, being the one who's betrayed? Emily's laugh was bitter. Is that what this is about? Making me feel what you felt? No. John's voice hardened. This is about consequences. Speaking of which, he checked his watch. Your sister should be calling any minute now. On cue, Emily's phone lit up with an incoming call. She stared at it, trembling. Go ahead, John said softly. Answer it. Let's hear what big sister Becky thinks about her baby sister's moral choices. Emily's hand shook as she reached for the phone. Becky. The voice on the other end was loud enough for John to hear. How could you? Mom's in tears. Dad can't even speak. And you just destroyed your whole family for what? Some cheap affair? It wasn't. Don't you dare make excuses. Becky's voice cracked with rage. Do you know what this will do to Mom's position at church? To Dad's standing in the community? Did you think about anyone but yourself? Emily's face crumpled. Please, just let me. No. You don't get to explain. You don't get to justify. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a sister anymore. The call ended with a harsh click. The phone slipped from Emily's fingers, clattering on the counter. She looked up at John, tears streaming down her face. Happy now? She whispered. Happy. John moved around the island, invading her space. You think this is about happiness? He pressed the gun under her chin. This is about justice. About watching your carefully constructed world burn. Just like you burned mine. Then do it. Emily's voice cracked. Pull the trigger. End it. It's better than watching you destroy everything I love. John's smile was razor sharp. That's where you're wrong, Emily. Death is mercy, and you deserve none. He lowered the gun. No, you're going to live. You're going to wake up every morning knowing what you've lost. Your family, your lover, your career, your reputation, everything you valued, everything you took for granted, gone. Why draw it out? She met his eyes, desperation giving her courage. Why not just end it? Because quick pain fades. John traced the gun barrel down her cheek. I want you to feel every loss, every betrayal, every consequence. I want you to understand exactly what you threw away. His phone buzzed another message from Claire. Robert's crying in his car outside. Should I call the police? John showed Emily the message, watching her face contort with fresh pain. Your lover's not handling his fall from grace very well. Then again, men like Robert rarely do. They talk big about love and destiny until it costs them something. You're enjoying this, Emily accused. You're getting off on our pain. Wrong again. John's voice was ice. I feel nothing for either of you. No anger, no satisfaction, no pity. You're just objects now, things to be dismantled piece by piece. He stepped back, gesturing with the gun. Now let's finish our game. One last round of truth. I've told you everything, Emily protested. Not quite. John spun the cylinder. Tell me about the future you imagined, the life you planned with him. I want to hear every detail of the happiness you'll never have. John, please, the gun pressed against her forehead. Tell me. Emily's shoulders slumped. We talked about traveling, about finding a place together, somewhere quiet. He said once things settled down, once we were free. Free? John's laugh was sharp. You actually believed him? A man who's cheated on his wife for 15 years with 6 different women. Emily's head snapped up. What? Oh, didn't he tell you? John's smile was vicious. Claire's known about his affairs for years. She was just waiting for the right moment, the right evidence to trigger the prenup clause. He leaned closer. You weren't special, Emily. You weren't even unique. You were just the latest in a long line of foolish women who believed Robert's pretty lies. You're lying, she whispered, but doubt clouded her eyes. Am I? John pulled out his phone, showing her a series of photos. Here's Robert with his assistant last year. Here he is with a client the year before. Here's a particularly interesting shot from 3 years ago, right around the time we got married. Actually, Emily staggered back, her face ashen. All this time, you threw away everything for a man who saw you as nothing more than a convenient distraction. John's voice was almost gentle. How does it feel, Emily, knowing you're just another notch on his bedpost? Another fool who fell for his act? Stop, she begged. Please just stop. Why? The truth hurts, doesn't it? He advanced on her. Knowing you're not special, not chosen, not even particularly memorable in the grand scheme of his conquests? Emily's legs gave out, and she slid down the cabinet to the floor. I can't take any more. But there's so much more to come. John crouched in front of her. The divorce papers, the termination from your firm, the social isolation, the financial ruin. He smiled, cold and precise. I'm going to take everything from you, Emily. Not just the things you value, but the things you need. Your home, your job, your family, your dignity. He stood, looking down at her broken form. And the best part? Everyone will say you deserved it. The cheating wife who destroyed her marriage for a man who didn't even remember her name in his confession to his wife. Emily's sobs echoed through the kitchen, but John felt nothing, no satisfaction, no pity, no trace of the love he'd once felt. There was only the cold certainty of his purpose, and the promise of more pain to come. Get up, he said quietly. We're not finished yet. Emily looked up, makeup streaked across her face. What more can you possibly do? John's smile was darkness itself. Oh, Emily, we're just getting to the good part. John's footsteps echoed through the silent house as he climbed the stairs, Emily following behind like a condemned prisoner. The revolver hung loose in his grip, a constant reminder of the power he wielded. Not just the power of the weapon, but the power to destroy everything she held dear. "Sit," he commanded when they reached his office. Emily sank into the chair across from his desk, her earlier defiance crushed under the weight of revelations. Her phone lay silent now. No more desperate messages from Robert. No more angry calls from family members. The quiet felt like the eye of a storm. "Do you know what I learned in military intelligence?" John settled into his chair, placing the revolver on the desk between them. "The most effective weapon isn't violence. It's information." He opened his laptop. "Would you like to see what information can do? Haven't you done enough?" Emily's voice was raw. "You've taken everything. Everything." John's laugh was soft and dangerous. "Oh no, Emily. I've barely started." He turned the laptop toward her. "Take a look." The screen showed her company's internal messaging system. Dozens of emails from colleagues, their subject lines ranging from concerned to accusatory. Emily's face paled as she scrolled through them. "How did you get access to your work account?" John's smile was cold. "You really should change your passwords more often, especially after using the same one for 3 years. He leaned forward. "But that's not the interesting part. Keep reading." Emily's hands began to shake as she reached a particular email. "No, you didn't. Forward evidence of your expense report fraud to the ethics committee. Copy the board on proof that you used company resources to conduct your affair." John's voice was casual, as if discussing the weather. "Of course I did. They're meeting tomorrow morning to discuss your termination. They can't fire you for cause, deny your severance, report you to the state licensing board." He raised an eyebrow. "Actually, they can, and they will. Claire Anderson sits on the ethics committee, remember?" Emily slumped in her chair. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "Almost." John stood, moving to the window. "There's still the matter of your future. Or rather, the lack of it." "What do you mean?" He turned, moonlight casting sharp shadows across his features. "Tell me, Emily, what do you think happens to a financial advisor who's been fired for ethics violations? Who's been reported to the licensing board for fraud? Who's become the subject of office gossip and social scandal?" "I'll find another firm," she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. "Will you?" John moved closer, his presence looming over her. "With no references? No professional network? No clean record?" He leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do you know how small the financial world is in this city? How quickly word spreads?" Emily's breathing quickened. "You can't." "Can't what?" "Tell the truth." He straightened up. "I don't have to do anything, Emily. The truth of your actions will do all the work for me." He picked up the revolver, loading it with slow, deliberate movements. "But we're not finished yet. Not even close. What more can you possibly do?" Tears streaked down her face. "You've destroyed my marriage, my career, my reputation." "And your lover," John interrupted. "Don't forget how quickly Robert threw you under the bus to save himself." He spun the cylinder. "How does it feel, by the way, being betrayed by the man you betrayed me for?" "Stop it." "Why? Does it hurt?" He pressed the gun against her forehead. "Does it ache to know that he never loved you? That you were just another conquest in his long line of affairs?" Emily's sob caught in her throat. "Please, please, what?" John's voice hardened. "Please stop telling you the truth. Please stop making you face the consequences of your choices." He moved the gun to her temple. "Tell me, Emily, what exactly are you begging for?" "Mercy," she whispered. The sound of John's laughter filled the room, a cold, empty sound that held no trace of humanity. "Mercy? Like the mercy you showed me? Like the mercy you showed our marriage?" He pulled the trigger, clicked. That Emily's scream was different this time. Not just fear, but complete despair. She collapsed forward, her body racked with sobs. "Get up!" John's voice cut through her cries. "We're not done. I can't take any more. You can, and you will." He grabbed her arm, pulling her upright. "Because this is just the beginning of your descent, Emily. By the time I'm finished, you'll look back on this moment as the high point of your fall." He dragged her to the window, forcing her to look out at their carefully manicured lawn, their expensive cars in the driveway. See all this? The life you were so eager to throw away. His grip tightened. Tomorrow, the movers come. They'll pack everything. Every stick of furniture, every piece of art, every luxury you've grown accustomed to. And do you know where it's all going? Emily shook her head, trembling. To auction. John's smile was vicious. Everything we own together, everything you helped choose, will be sold to the highest bidder. And the money? That goes to my new foundation, helping faithful spouses recover from betrayal. You're insane, Emily whispered. No, I'm methodical. He spun her to face him. Every detail planned, every consequence calculated. Your suffering isn't just punishment, Emily. It's art. The revolver pressed cold against her chest, right over her heart. And we're about to create the masterpiece. Emily's eyes widened with fresh terror. John, please, whatever you're planning, show. He pressed the gun harder. The time for begging is over. Now it's time for your final lesson in consequences. Thunder rolled in the distance as John led her back to the chair. The storm that had been threatening all evening was finally breaking, providing the perfect backdrop for what was to come. Sit down, he commanded, and prepare yourself. Because everything you've experienced so far, that was just the warm-up. Emily sank into the chair, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. John stood over her, the revolver steady in his hand, his eyes cold with purpose. The real descent was about to begin. Thunder cracked outside as John reloaded the revolver, this time ensuring Emily watched each deliberate movement. The bullet gleamed in the office's dim light before disappearing into the chamber. You know what's interesting about betrayal? He spun the cylinder. It's not just the act itself that destroys people. It's the ripple effects. The cylinder clicked into place. The way it poisons everything it touches. Emily sat rigid in her chair, exhaustion warring with terror on her face. What more can you possibly want? Want? John's smile was razor-sharp. This stopped being about what I want the moment I found those messages. He moved to his desk, opening a drawer. This is about what you deserve. He pulled out a stack of papers, dropping them in front of her. Emily's hands shook as she picked up the first page. These are property records? Very good. John leaned against the desk. Specifically, they're records of every property Robert Anderson has visited in the past 6 months. Hotels, apartments, rental houses. He paused meaningfully. Love Ness. Emily's face paled. Why are you showing me this? Because you still don't understand what kind of man you destroyed our marriage for. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. While you were dreaming of your future together, Robert was busy maintaining his other relationships. He turned the phone toward her. The screen showed Robert with different women lunch dates, hotel meetings, intimate moments he thought were private. No, Emily whispered. These could be old. The timestamps say otherwise. John's voice was clinical. That one's from last week. The day after he told you he loved you, if I remember correctly. Emily's hands clenched into fists. You're lying. Am I? John pulled up a video and pressed play. Robert's voice filled the office. Emily? She's just convenient. Her schedule matches mine, and she's naive enough to believe anything. But you're special. The words were spoken to another woman in another hotel room, recorded just 3 days ago. Emily's face crumpled as she recognized the shirt she'd bought him, visible in the footage. Turn it off, she begged. Why? Don't you want to hear how he really sees you? John's smile was cruel. How you're just another fool in his long line of conquests? Emily lunged for the phone, but John caught her wrist easily. Careful now. We wouldn't want any accidents. The revolver pressed against her stomach. Why are you doing this? Tears streamed down her face. You've already won. You've destroyed everything. Won. John laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet room. This isn't about winning, Emily. This is about justice. About consequences. He released her wrist, watching her stumble back. And speaking of consequences, he reached into his jacket, pulling out another envelope. Your termination papers will arrive tomorrow morning. But these? He waved the envelope. These are special. What is it? A complete record of your fraud. Every falsified expense report. every misused company resource, every lie you told to cover your affair. He placed it carefully on the desk. The board doesn't have these yet, but the district attorney's office will receive them first thing tomorrow. Emily's legs gave out, and she collapsed back into the chair. You're going to have me arrested? No, Emily. I'm going to have you investigated. John's voice was soft with menace. The arrest will come later, after they've had time to build their case. And they will build a case. Claire Anderson has some very interesting friends in the DA's office. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the terror on Emily's face. They'll put me in jail. Possibly. Financial crimes are taken very seriously these days. He examined the revolver thoughtfully. But that's really the least of your concerns. What do you mean? John's smile widened. You still don't see the whole picture, do you? The criminal investigation will make headlines. Your name will be toxic in the financial industry. No firm will touch you. No client will trust you. He leaned closer. You'll be unemployable in your field. Forever. I can find another career. Can you? He raised an eyebrow. With what skills? What references? What resources? He gestured around the office. Everything you have, everything you are, came from the life you just threw away. Emily's breathing became ragged. I'll start over. People do it all the time. People with support systems do it. People with families who love them. People with friends they can rely on. John's voice was merciless. Who do you have, Emily? Your family won't speak to you. Your friends have abandoned you. Your lover threw you to the wolves to save himself. He pressed the revolver against her forehead. You're alone. Completely, utterly alone. And that's exactly how you'll stay. Please, she whispered. I'll do anything. John chuckled darkly. Anything? Like what? What could you possibly offer me? He lowered the gun. You have nothing I want, Emily. Nothing I need. You're just unnecessary. He walked to the window, looking out at the storm. You know what the best part is? Everything that's happening to you, the divorce, the job loss, the criminal investigation, it's all perfectly legal. All perfectly justified. He turned back to her. I don't have to break any laws to destroy you. Your own actions have given me everything I need. Emily's phone buzzed another message from Robert. John picked it up before she could reach it. Oh, this is interesting, he said, reading the text. Apparently, Robert's trying to make a deal with Claire. He's offering to testify against you in exchange for a better divorce settlement. He showed her the screen. Seems he has evidence that you were the aggressor, that you manipulated him into the affair. He's lying, Emily protested weakly. Of course he is. But who will believe you? The woman who cheated on her husband? Who committed fraud? Who's about to be arrested? John's smile was vicious. Your word means nothing now, Emily. You've destroyed your own credibility. He moved back to his desk, picking up the revolver. Now, shall we finish our game? One last round of truth before everything ends. Emily looked up, mascara streaked across her face. Are you going to kill me? John pressed the gun against her forehead, his finger tightening on the trigger. Emily closed her eyes, her body trembling. Click. Kill you? He lowered the weapon, chuckling darkly. No, Emily. Death is too quick, too merciful. He tucked the revolver into his waistband. I want you to live. I want you to wake up every morning knowing what you've lost. I want you to spend years trying to rebuild, only to find every door closed, every opportunity blocked. He leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper. I'm going to watch you suffer, Emily. Watch you struggle. Watch you desperately try to find some way back to normalcy. His smile was cold enough to freeze hell. And every time you think you've found a way forward, I'll be there to remind everyone exactly who and what you are. Thunder crashed outside as John straightened up. You should start packing. The movers will be here at 8, and they've been instructed to remove everything except your personal clothing. He moved toward the door. Oh, and Emily? Don't bother trying to take anything valuable. I have a complete inventory, and the police are very interested in theft allegations these days. John, wait. Emily's voice was barely audible. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? He paused in the doorway, looking back at her broken form. That's not my concern anymore. You made your choices, Emily. Now you get to live with them. His smile was razor sharp. Welcome to the rest of your life. As John walked away, leaving Emily sobbing in his office. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction, no trace of the love he'd once felt. There was only the cold certainty that justice had been served, and the promise of more suffering to come. Let her cry. Let her beg. Let her realize that her comfortable world was gone forever. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of her descent into ruin, and he would be there, watching every step of her fall.